Hi, everybody. We are on lesson 9 today, and we're going to focus on the final spirit, who is a ghost of Christmas yet to come. So, in today's lesson, I'm just going to catch you up on what we've done so far. At this point in the novella, he's been visited by 2 of the 3 Christmas spirits, Ghost of Christmas Past, Ghost of Christmas Present, and now we have got the Ghost of Yet to Come. So, this is the ghost that's basically going to show what's going to happen to Scrooge if he just stays the same. His presence of the Ghost of Yet to Come is very different from the first 2. He's a much more somber figure. As well as that, Scrooge's interaction with the final ghost has also changed. So instead of refusing and being reluctant to accept the guidance of Spirit, I remember he tried to press down on the cap of the Ghost of Christmas Past because he couldn't face the knowledge that he was being confronted with. He's desperate to learn at this stage. I think at this point we start to see that Scrooge is really, really quite fearful about what's going to happen to him, what his fate will be. So I'm going to read the extract, and then we're going to move on to the description of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. So let's get started. So the phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of its visible save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. "I am the presence of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come," said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. "You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not yet happened, but will happen in time before us," Scrooge pursued. "Is that so, spirit?" The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant. It was cold, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Although well used to a ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent place so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. The spirit paused a moment as observing his condition and giving him time to recover, but Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him, while he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. "Ghost of the future," he exclaimed, "I fear you more than any spectre I've ever seen, but as I know your purpose to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?" It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. "Lead on," said Scrooge, "lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me. I know, lead on, spirit." The phantom moved away as it had come towards him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. So I just wanted to focus on the first quote because I think it contrasts with what we've seen in terms of the presentation of the previous 2 ghosts. So the phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached, and when it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was shrouded. So I think the first thing we could link to is the fact that this time this ghost seems to surround itself with the motif of darkness. And as we've gone through these lessons, we've really focused heavily on the motif of light. So remember, we've said that light focuses on enlightenment and clarity and sort of hope. But this figure here is somebody that is sort of surrounded in darkness, and this could be sort of linked to 2 things really, because when we look at the image of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, Scrooge Dickens has created him in the sort of form of the Grim Reaper, which the Victorian audience would be heavily familiar with. It's something that's personified as somebody that is linked to death, and also the symbol of approaching death. So this is linked to this idea of what terrifying outcomes could await Scrooge if he doesn't change. And so what we've got here is the fact that the image of the ghost of yet to come is surrounded with gloom and mystery as well. This also links this idea that the outcome of Scrooge's life is an afterlife, should I say. So remember, we've got Marley, who was stuck in purgatory. Purgatory is a place where those who have committed sin live in a life of torment. That is his forebodes and perhaps foreshadows what could happen to Scrooge. And so Scrooge is terrified of that because he's seen Marley, and this is why there's such a change where he's desperate to see if it's not too late. So again, what we've got here as well with the listing of slowly, gravely, silently approach, I'd like to focus on the adverb silently. Now, again, this is very different from the previous two ghosts. Ghost of Christmas Present was quite jovial in his presence. Both of the ghosts prior to this spoke to Scrooge, whereas this phantom is more, I would say, a fearful figure because he says nothing. You could interpret it as a sort of way of intimidating Scrooge. But a second way of looking at that is perhaps Scrooge doesn't want to say anything because he wants to see if Scrooge can learn for himself. And the juxtaposition of the phantom being a figure that Scrooge actually reveres now, because as you can see, this imagery of bent down upon his knee, this imagery shows you that Scrooge is the less powerful figure and he is willing to listen to what this spirit has to say. Now, if this ghost represents the future, then we could arguably say that instead of just the fact that it looks like a Grim Reaper and it looks at this sort of doom that the ghost that Scrooge has come into him, and the fact that the ghost is shrouded in a deep black garment, the verb shrouded has two meanings. You could link to this idea of it linking to death, this idea of the cloth wrapped around the body. Or also, when something is shrouded, it means it is covered, it is difficult to see. And the fact that it's in a deep black garment, okay, could link to this idea of two things: the fact that it's not visible, or the idea of evil. But if we look at this idea of the lack of visibility, it's this idea that Scrooge's future is very, very uncertain. Okay, and I think this all links to whether Scrooge is going to make that choice. Okay, it's uncertain because we're not sure in what way, what direction Scrooge is going to take. Again, we've got this motif of the hand. So whilst the ghost is seen as an intimidating, like I said, quite a fearful, terrifying figure towards the audience, a more subtle quote here and a more judicious quote would be this idea that the hand and the adjective is outstretched. So therefore, we could say that this hand could link to the motif of guidance, that the ghost isn't there to just intimidate Scrooge, but also to still offer that guidance. But like I said, it's less forceful than Ghost of Christmas Past and the Ghost of Christmas Present. But at this point, the darkness that this ghost is surrounded by is more to do with the uncertainty of Scrooge's future, as opposed to just simply saying it's all doom and gloom for Scrooge, it's too late. And I think the fact that we in the extract, Scrooge wants to listen. He says it and it describes it with a thankful heart. Shows you that he's willing to be open to the advice that the ghost will bring with this visit. Is there anything you'd like to add, Miss Harrison?
No, I think you've done a really good job. The other thing that I could probably add is just kind of being aware of that semantic field, which you've already talked about, the semantic field of darkness, and like Miss Wan said, it's not, Scrooge's future isn't set in stone, but it is looking very bleak at the minute, which I think is why these final lessons are kind of brought to him to kind of be the kind of final thing that will make him want to change. So yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm just going to move on to your next quote.
Brilliant.
Half isn't the description, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is I think it's just after Miss Wan's bit that she's just read. So, although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. The spirit paused a moment, as observing his condition and giving him time to recover. But Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him, while he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. Okay, so this description, I think the one of the most important things to note in this stave is the kind of separation from previous ghosts and spirits to this one. So this is the only ghost that Dickens refers to as a phantom, which I think is quite important. The other ones are referred to as ghosts or spirits, whereas phantom has a much more negative, more gothic connotation, which I'm going to go into in a little bit. Okay, so that's the first thing to note. Then obviously we've got the in the second line we've got the sibilance that's used. So Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him. I think the ghost's silence is again something that you could really pick apart here. Arguably, one reason why he doesn't speak is that if he was to say something to Scrooge, the thing, if you don't change, this is how people are going to react to your death. If you don't change, this is what's going to happen to Tiny Tim. I think if he was to vocalise those, that kind of the future of Scrooge, it would be unchangeable. It would be final. Whereas the ghost silence and the fact that he doesn't really, he doesn't say anything, he only kind of points Scrooge towards certain things. It makes it Scrooge's responsibility to change himself. It's not up to the ghost to force him. Okay, so while you might see this as a more forceful character because he's more intimidating, he's more of a fearful character, he doesn't actually force him into doing anything. He doesn't even say anything to him to get him to change, which I think is quite important. And you can see how the kind of what's the word that I'm looking for? The kind of the length of Scrooge's trajectory, how it's changed. That's probably not the right word, but it's showing you it's showing the reader how much Scrooge has changed. That it's the ghost literally has to say nothing to him. Okay, obviously you've got the silent shape there, which has this kind of sinister S sound to it. But if something's repeated, I always teach my lot if alliteration is used or sibilance or whatever, if sounds are repeated, so for example this S sound, because it's said more than once, it's this idea of permanence. So again, if Scrooge doesn't change, then this will be his permanent future. He will die with no one to mourn him. All right. So the next thing that I'm going to go on to is the kind of the last bit in here where it says to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him. So again, we've talked in previous lessons about this idea of metaphorical blindness and clarity and the ability to see. Even though Scrooge can't see the ghost's eyes, he knows that he's watching him and watching his every move, which again is something that is making him quite fearful. And I think you can look at that adverb and verb intently and fixed. So again, if something's fixed, it's immovable, it's unchangeable. So Scrooge has got kind of no room for movement here. He's got no wiggle room to try and get himself out of a situation. He has to face the reality of his future if he doesn't change. And the fact that they are intently fixed upon him, he's kind of watching him like a hawk. He's watching his every move and kind of seeing if he's actually going to learn from the things that he's going to show him. So going back to what I said earlier on about this idea of the Victorian Gothic. Now, if you have any understanding of Gothic at all, it's Gothic started in books like Dracula. The first Gothic novel was actually Castle of Otranto. And it always took place in foreign countries. So Castle of Otranto was Italy, Dracula is Romania, Frankenstein is Switzerland. So it always took place somewhere foreign. Now, back in the Victorian era, people weren't hopping onto planes to Tenerife at the 6-week holiday. That kind of travel wasn't accessible, and it certainly wasn't accessible to everyone. You could get boats and things, but again, that was only kind of accessible to the really wealthy. You wouldn't see a working class family going abroad for a holiday. So things like, Frankenstein, who is a monster that's made out of corpses, Dracula is a vampire who sucks people's blood, that would have seemed perfectly logical to a Victorian audience who would have known nothing about what goes on really in other countries. So they really believed that things like that could happen. And I think through Dickens setting the story in London, urban London, it makes the reality of this fear more terrifying, because Gothic stories didn't happen in England. They didn't happen, as particularly in a big city like London. So I think again, the setting that's used and this kind of Gothic tone that's all the way throughout the novella, but I think more kind of noticeable in Stave 4, is really important to note. And if you get a question on like the supernatural or the use of setting, you could bring in this idea of what's called the urban Gothic. So setting a story, i.e. Christmas Carol, in an inner city, that wasn't foreign and far away and far removed from their version of reality, made it all the more fearful and terrifying. And remember that the ghosts are used as a tool for change. Okay, that the fear that they invoke into Scrooge is what makes him change. And arguably that is what would make the Victorian reader change as well. This fear that ghosts could come and haunt them and kind of make them aware of all of their misgivings and things like that would have been inherently terrifying for a Victorian reader. So I think that's really something that you can draw on if you're looking for those higher grades. Is there anything that you can add to that, Miss Wan?
No, I really love that comment, Miss Harrison, about the use of the urban Gothic, because if we're looking, about developing your AO3 skills, which is your context, looking at a genre of a novella can count for that. So you don't always have to talk about just about what Victorian society was like. You can also look at genre. I just wanted to, I guess, we'll look at the idea of that there are Gothic elements that Dickens hates. The fact that you've got the Christmas shroud and the heap of black, this all links to one of the conventions of Gothic, which you can think about the fact that they use obscurity as well, don't they? And the fact that the ghost is not visible to Scrooge or to the audience can also link to that fear as well, because it's that fear of the unknown as well, about what could possibly happen to him. So I really love that comment about the urban gothic. Well, like we said, we hope you're all okay. We'll be doing a couple more videos on the present, when he's taken, doesn't he, to his future, and he sees how people towards his death, and then the transformation of Scrooge. I think we've got maybe two videos left to do. And so we hope you're all okay, and then please email us with any questions if something doesn't make sense, or if you've got your own interpretations you want to chat with us. We're fine with sort of sending you feedback on that. Okay, thank you, bye.